back from the closed session where there was no reportable action. We are back into our regular business session. First item of business is discussion and direction regarding the proposed rate increase by the Selma Kingsburg Fowler County Sanitation District. Report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. One note, correction on the staff report on the fourth line at the end. It does say that the customer would be paying an additional $14.55 per month. That is actually per year. So it's something like $1.21 per month and then $14.55 per year. So this item has been placed on our agenda today in order to provide a representative for the SKF board, Councilmember Avalos. He wanted to get input from the group as to the direction you'd like to go because they are voting on this on Thursday.
That's correct. That's correct. That's why I brought it to the council to, that way we have discussion. I brought Ben here and Veronica as engineer as well. So if we have any questions on that last presentation they did, they can answer those questions if you guys have any concerns on that particular issue. All right. Because we'll be voting on this matter coming, so I need your guys' input, before we move forward on this issue on SKF.
Appreciate the heads up.
And whatever support or opposition or direction the council wants to go with it, we can provide a letter supporting that. That way there is a record for SKF and for the council member to have.
The city will send that to SKF in advance of the vote on Thursday. So Councilmember Avalos can reference that
Right.
before he votes to
Yes.
explain your vote.
Yes, that's why we're having a special meeting.
Good deal.
Mayor and Council, Ben Munoz, General Manager for Selma Kingsburg Fowler County Sanitation District. I just want to clarify something. On Thursday, we do the first reading of the ordinance, so it's a public hearing, and then it comes back to the board in July 11th for the final votes on the increase. And again, the board will have a recommendation of a 5-year increase of 3.5%. However, they can choose to do nothing. They can choose to do 3.5% for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 to 5 years, and that's the voting of the board direction. So that's how this is gonna go forward for this Thursday and July. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that for you.
That's good to know.
It's good to know.
Okay.
Anybody have any comments? Any
Any
questions?
comments?
No, I mean, obviously none of us like rate increases, but as we all know, our infrastructures and in dire repair, and these increases are going to be used for our capital, excuse me, our capital improvement plan, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Ben?
Yes, that is part of the increase. It's also for doing cost of business for O&M, operations and maintenance also. It's a combination of both of those things.
And what's the commercial rate increase, Ben?
I'm sorry, what was that question?
What will the commercial rate increase be?
The
We saw the
commercial,
residential.
it's 3.5 for one ESFR, equivalent
same.
to everything, yes.
Okay.
It's across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah.
So 3.5 increase can be stretched out among 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
It could be whatever the board decides, yes. It could be 1 year increase, or it could be, if they go for 2 or 3 or 5 years. But each year they come back and reevaluate that increase regardless. So say they do a 3-year increase, the second year we find that we only need 2%, they can reduce that to 2%. So that would be just the maximum that we can increase, 3.5, if that's what's approved.
And what happens if you don't get a rate increase?
Well, that holds all the capital improvement projects, that defers all the projects, and any other items that we may be looking into doing. Could be,
But you can go back next year and ask
we
for
would go
another.
back next year and ask for an increase if that would be the case. And it would probably be, a higher percent than what the
Make up for
recommendation
this
is.
year.
Yes.
But
Make
there's
it-
no emergencies, there's no expanded service that you'd be offering as a result of this rate increase this year?
Correct,
It would
yeah.
go in the capital improvements.
Right, that would be
And
tabled and deferred.
maintenance and
Yeah.
service.
I have a question, Ben, so you can probably stay up there for a little.
Sorry.
Hey, so the last two times you've come here, you've expressed that, you came the first time and you said, hey, I'm here, this is what we've done since 2010 or 1970. Does the board acknowledge that they didn't have a infrastructure plan prior to 2010?
Yes, they are aware.
So
of that.
knowing that they acknowledge and they're aware of that, are they not in any way understanding that we're asking our residents to raise their bill? But at the same time, the board that governs the rate increase for our community didn't do their homework and didn't do their plan. So now you're coming, and we can initially tell our residents that they didn't do their plan, but they wanna raise the rate. So what can I tell my resident that you're gonna do to make sure that you're gonna do the infrastructure if you do get a rate increase?
The board has acknowledged that, and they were aware of that. That's why they are willing to move forward on doing the increases that they have done since that time. Because there is a board member that's been there for several years, and he's aware of the history, and he has shared that with the board on many occasions.
And I thank you because you're coming into it and you're saying, hey, look, I wasn't here, but I'm looking at this and I got a plan.
Mhm.
And I acknowledge that and I appreciate that.
Mhm.
But as an elected official for the city of Selma, I have to look at what's the best, and at the same time, I can explain to them, and we're gonna give them a rate increase, but what are we doing for our infrastructure? How are you're the board, we go to you when you ask your board to make sure that maybe you could give us a 5-year plan. Will your board take into account, and maybe in the future, start giving us a yearly plan of what our infrastructure plan looks like? What's your analysis on the 3%? What are we gonna be getting back in a percentage as to create a mechanism for our infrastructure for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah,
Could you possibly do that?
yeah, that could be done, and that's done every year. It actually is evaluated, both through the capital improvement and the budget. That is brought to the board and to your representative here every year and reevaluated clearly throughout the thing. I just want to say something. Since 2010, the district has been a state-of-the-art facility and has been award-winning facility due to its progress and movement of the new board moving forward and taking the ball and not passing it down the road and taking care of what needs to be done as business to every day. So we can show that to our residents and to the people we serve.
But if you have a state-of-the-art facility and we can't get our waste to it, that's a problem for the city.
And that's what we're addressing. That's this whole process is to address.
And I
that.
appreciate everything you're doing, but I just wanna
Yeah.
make sure that you understand the importance, and maybe you can relay that message that we need to start having an infrastructure plan of action for our city. And I hope that you can hopefully relay and understand the importance of it. I thank you for everything you've done, but at the same time, I want to state the importance of it.
Yeah, thank you. We will.
Ben, can I ask you, do you guys get grants or any source of funding?
No, we have not been able to obtain any grants. There is no grants available. We continue to look at grants and any possible grants that we can get. Even with this McCall line, we had to apply for a state revolving loan, which was a 2% interest loan. And that's even been very, very difficult to handle because of the state. The state is very hard to work around with, and we have even had issues with that loan. So it's been a very complicated process. And unfortunately, most of the loans are for recycled water or water loans. There is nothing available right now, but we do continue to look for grants.
What's the salary level at SKF then? What was the last MOU? You have different labor groups at SKF?
Yeah, last time we do have a union, Local 39. It was an increase of 3%, and we're going through negotiations right now on that.
Was that a 3-year MOU or is 2-year?
We had a
1 year?
1-year MOU.
So you renegotiate them every year?
Right now, that's the way it's been going, yes.
But you had that budgeted in, this 3.5%'s not for wage increases?
No.
Okay, that was already in there.
Correct.
How do you pay that for that, just out of operating funds?
Yeah, O&M, operation and
O&M.
maintenance, yes.
Um, And then the last, just correct me, Art, let me know. The last 2 years, we had a 6.5% rate increase last year, 6.5 the year before. Did we have any the year before that, or were we flat before that? Do you remember?
I think there was, I can't recall, but I think there was like a 3% or.
Pretty standard 3%?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, in the last 4 years, we've had a lot of increases, and understandably so. But I think people are tired of increases, and that's where we come in as elected officials, being the conduit for the people, a mouthpiece for the people. And SKF does a really good job, but then people say, what do we get out of it? I mean, we got this McCall line, we have to fix everything ourselves, we gotta pay for everything here. But SKF does a great job there. It's just, there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the services there and what we get here in our city, and all we hear is our sewer lines are at capacity. We're just at capacity. We can't do anything more. It frustrates people, you know, and they just hear we're at capacity. What I think we need to keep doing is focusing on the solutions, of opening up those lines and expanding and making deals to get those new lines in, to make it work for these developers. So rather than just talking about the problems all the time, talk about solutions as well. And then, you know, these rate increases don't really help. I think they frustrate people when we see them, even though they're understandable and they're marginal. I don't know if it's the right, you know, signal to send when we're not actually expanding services in this case. What would your recommendation be as our representative on SKF?
Let me, if I allow the council to, let me go back to the SKF and try to negotiate a little bit different offer,
A little bit lower?
a little lower if I can. You know, I mean, I'll be looking at all the, you know, the reports very carefully, and it'll be up to our board, you know, up there, and if they're willing to look at it a little more deeper.
What do you hear from them, Jim? What's the tone there of the board? Are they for this increase? Are they neutral? Are they
No, I
against
think,
it?
you know, I'll be honest with you guys, seriously, we're looking at the very carefully, these numbers and what their operation expenses and everything, and the overall picture, you know, and SKF has done a good job at providing that information to us, and like Johnny says, their plan, their format, they're laying out a future plan for not, you know, for all cities and participants in SKF, and they're trying to improve their technological advancements and keep ahead of the game. You know, with SKF has been very good at, you know, learning new technology, and they trying to stay ahead of it. But at the same time, we're looking at the whole picture overall. How can we keep the rates down and the service more efficient, you know, to the taxpayers? Because, you know, as time grows, they're going to get big, but also new technology is coming about, so we can maybe cut down some of those costs and, you know, trying to, you know, provide some better services down the road.
So your recommendation is not the full 3.5%, but
Well,
something lower?
Let me go back and see what we can do.
What kind of letter would we need to send on that basis? Would that be, because that's not a real percentage that we could actually.
No, it's not a
support.
real percent. What it is what he's talking is a format they're laying out right now, you know, and the cost factors and.
There are 2 meetings. So
Yeah,
there's
so
one on
I'm not,
Thursday
you
and
know,
one in July.
and it's up to the board, you know, to present the case and how I present it, you know, to the board.
Do we have to do a letter of support now, or can we do it before the final vote?
I
once
think
we hear what they say?
at this point, it would be if council is in support of negotiating, having council member Avalos go back and let them know that the council's not in support of the 3.5, but something a little lower.
Yes, a little lower.
I think, is that what I'm hearing?
I'm good with that.
You
Everybody
you guys, I mean, you know, it's a,
I think we need to, you know, our infrastructure is in disarray, and like I said, none of us like increases. But a capital improvement plan is, unless you can execute it, it's kind of worthless. And the fact of the matter is, we need money to fix our existing sewer system. And this is how we're gonna do it. And if we're gonna just wanna put in less, well, that's just less repairs we're gonna get for our citizens.
I don't know if theirs though, Will. It'd be internal. Wouldn't it be our city that would have to fix our sewer system?
Yeah.
This is to fix their
Exactly.
No, this
system,
is
the
for our
collection.
city, correct, right? As well, for our capital
Yeah,
improvement? for
that's
our-
a combination of all three,
All three cities. It's all three
rates.
cities.
The operation maintenance, the
You-
R&R.
Are you gonna come in and clean out our lines though? You're gonna pay to do that and pay
Yeah,
to
that'll
replace our lines?
continue to happen, yes.
This feeds our account.
Do
It
we
just
have that
makes
in
our account
writing?
bigger.
That's
It
correct.
is a good, ben-
It
it
is
is a
in
good
their,
benchmark.
it's
not
in
a
your
question
approved
about it.
budget.
Is it in your is it in the contract?
It's in the, excuse me, the service agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. It's in the service agreement.
what-
you
that
come
we
out and
are
clean it?
Timeline on that,
responsible
coming in
for
and actually
maintaining.
doing that? Is there a timeline on that, Ben?
On
Coming
what?
in and cleaning out those existing lines that are full?
It's a continuing process. As you've seen the presentation, we have several lines. And
No, I mean,
that's-
like, is there a start point and an end point? Like, you're gonna come in, you're gonna do, McCall in 2019.
I'll have
think they just do it
Veronica
as-
explain that
as-
for you.
What?
Priority, the ones that are failing.
I knew you,
Okay,
I knew you show up, Veronica.
Yeah, cleaning lines is pretty much a continual thing. Every line gets touched at least every other year. We do have hot spots, and those we are at either at a 3 or 1 month interval. So there's some areas of town where you will see the Vector truck every month or every 3 months. And then other areas would be every other year. So that's continual. Also, another thing to keep in mind is the SKF is responsible for the lower lateral, which is from the property line to the main. And we've seen an increase, a huge increase in lateral replacements. So that's a service we provide, and we still go out to every single resident that calls for a service call. So that's throughout all our 3 cities.
And so
So-
you still have, how many lines have you cleaned out? So the red that we see, which one is not red anymore from your efforts? Which ones are open now?
Oh, so the red ones, we have to go in and assess and see what kind of repair they need. There might be some that we never get to fix.
Oh, okay. So
Because
do you
if they're broken.
done any, you haven't increased capacity at all of the, because all we hear is we can't do any new construction downtown because the sewer lines are full. That's still the case, right?
Well, the district doesn't increase the capacity. Expansion is the.
Sorry, the lines that are at capacity right now.
Oh, I see.
Have you
Yeah,
increased
those-
capacity on any
Yeah,
of
those
those
are at
lines?
capacity regardless if we, replace them or have other kind of maintenance issues on them.
So what they do is go ahead.
Yeah, so we take care of everything that's in the ground
Got it.
already, existing.
So I have a question for you, and this is why I was asking for maybe every 3 months quarterly report. So in the past 3 to 5 years, we probably had, what, 6% increase, 6.5% increase, 3% increase, 1.5% increase, and a 3% increase, the last 5, 6 years. So where did you guys, or where's the plan that you had to create and support the infrastructure for the last 6 to 7 years? How much percent of the percentages went to infrastructure growth or fix? What are the percent of the percentage you've been charging per year to increase our rate? What percentage of that has become a percentage for infrastructure? Do you have that? Did I lose you?
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
I wouldn't
if
know what the
you-
percentage is without going back and
So
looking
that's,
at our
to
capital.
me, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because for one,
For me too.
if you're handling our rate increase every year,
That's what I'm saying.
and you're saying that you have
That's the problem.
part of the rate increase is a percentage goes for infrastructure, a percentage goes for preventative maintenance, a percentage goes to operations. In the last 6 years, how much of that percent has been budgeted for our infrastructure?
It just depends on the year that increase. Like I said, there's an O&M operations maintenance cost, which is for salary and services. And then there's our R&R for the plant. And then also Selma, Kingsbury, Fowler R&R. And there has been, in the past few years, probably 50% of that has gone to R&R.
So then maybe some of the percentage of the increase, maybe 1 year might not go to infrastructure, right?
Correct, it
And
just
it
depends.
depends, and it pertains to our board, correct?
Right,
How they
correct.
depend, how they're gonna structure their finances, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that
Thank-
answers a lot to me.
Yeah, I see.
No, mean, it's not getting any better, that's the
So,
thing.
so
Yeah.
that answered the question.
That's
So
right.
before we give them my own opinion, before we give them a letter of an approval, I would like to know the last 6 years, our rate increases, where the percentage have gone to R&R, where the percentage have gone for infrastructure, and where the percentage has gone to,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we can have an ability of understanding, so we can, what Mr. Frank was saying, fix our infrastructure problem, so we can understand their billing and how their board is thinking.
They keep getting these increases,
Well,
and
that's what
we
I'm
don't
saying.
we're not seeing a whole lot of change in the
don't
capacity.
They're
We
not
should
adding
have a workshop
capacity, but they
maybe.
need to fix what's existing.
They need to fix, and that's not getting done.
Yeah.
No.
And that's what we need to see, and that's why I think you guys do a great job. I just think that we're not making progress on these problems, and yet we're charging the citizens more, and there's frustration building because they're not seeing that. I mean, right now, looks like we have an issue on the street right now with one of the lines, and, you know, we're all involved in that. So that's why I would be hesitant to vote for the full increase, just because we're not seeing the progress there. I'd like to see our
What-
representative go back and,
Whatever increase they give, I would love to see a report on the last 6
A
years of the
breakdown.
percentage.
yeah, a plan on how we make those, increase or clean those lines out so that we restore capacity to those existing lines, rather than always saying the same thing and then getting increases, because you did have a wage increase. You got 3.5% wage increases, so, you know, we know that things are going up, and it's paying for that as well. I think we need to focus on our issues with the lines, and that'd be my vote. No increase until we hear what
Well, I think it's
what
too
kind of
short of a
progress we
notice,
can
but-
make.
Well, yeah, he's right, it's too short of a notice, Scott, but that's why the information was brought to the table here a little early to
Yeah,
address some of these issues.
Thank you for bringing that. We
No,
never had
I
that
mean,
before with
and
our
I
SKF
thank Ben and
representative.
Veronica to come, reaching out to him, and,
No one's blaming you guys.
No,
You know, your
and I
board's the
don't-
one that gives you direction. It's just a matter of,
Yeah.
we see the same thing over and over and over again, and then we get an increase. Why? You know, I mean, there's really no reason for it
Well-
until we start making some progress here in our systemic problems that we have. Because we need construction, we need capacity, we need to make our town grow, or we won't have the money, because we won't keep the citizens, to be able to pay these
No,
increases.
Mayor and council, I just want to clarify something. In 2016, we did the sewer master plan update, and this is where this mapping came out from. We have been continuously looking at our existing infrastructure and our future infrastructure. So there has been some progress made on some of the red lines that you see. The major one that you're not seeing is the McCall line. That was a very, very big project. And again, that was deferred 25 years. So there has been continuing
And we're paying for it,
progress on the increase
paying for it,
of its infrastructure.
right? But Selma's paying for that, right? I mean, you got
Well,
that
Selma's
state
paying their
revolving
share of
fund
their infrastructure.
Yeah.
Kingsford's paying their share of the infrastructure, and Fowler's paying
for their
fair
cities, for the
their
line in their
correct.
cities.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, so, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of back and forths, but I think it's probably prudent for all of us to probably go back and maybe do some initial analysis on some reporting and getting some numbers together. Me probably, as a representative of this community, would strongly encourage you and your staff to probably put some numbers together and share with us, so we could be more updated, because we know that you're doing a good job, but we will be able to maybe give and be able to understand it more, and maybe work with you a lot better, marry us together and get a better program for the future for our infrastructure.
We'd be more than happy to do that for you.
So we're deferring any kind of support for a rate increase till we have a plan on what we're gonna do
They're not gonna vote on
support
it
the
till July
infrastructure.
anyway, right?
Yeah,
Till July.
Yeah, we have a meeting Thursday, we won't vote until
So the
July.
instruction is not to vote for the rate increase, though, until
Well,
we know what they're
no,
gonna do in
just,
July.
this is just a public hearing informational right now on that issue.
We're giving,
I know,
we're-
but
I
does
do
it
have a
need a letter
question
of
for
support?
Ben. If your board is to give you direction to consider alternatives to the proposed increase, do you need that direction this Thursday?
It'd probably be helpful, that way we can bring it back
Otherwise-
in July.
Right.
That
Just
would
do
be
it.
correct.
So, I mean, I think some direction at this juncture would
need
be,
We're gonna get an increase.
Yeah.
we're gonna get an increase. But I'm just thinking that for the future, for us, we need to start,
If I can,
we need a workshop.
Yeah, we need to know what's gonna happen with these lines,
Yeah.
what, a plan with timelines on that,
I wanna
an
know-
action plan.
I wanna know, for the last 6 years, what percentage has gone into our infrastructure plan, even if it's been a discussion plan.
well, that would require a workshop, that'd require a workshop.
We need that.
just
I'm
do
good
it.
with the lower increase. I would recommend a
I-
lower increase.
Okay.
Do you need a vote on this to send something?
So I've heard from two. Yeah, we need consensus, so I think the Councilmember
This-
Avalos,
I just wanna go back and, negotiate,
a lower amount.
well, just try,
So
then,
that's a motion and a
whatever,
second?
whatever you guys.
Motion and second
Okay.
to ask for a lower rate increase. And
Oh, we just
Yeah.
need consensus, not a
I-
vote?
The consensus,
One, two,
need consensus.
I think we should just go with the district's recommendation at this
3.5.
point.
I think we should go with district's
3.5.
recommendation.
I'd say let's go with the lower.
all right, so we
Oh,
have
consensus is
three
lower.
going for lower and
All right.
two with the recommendation.
I'll try. I'll try.
Do your best.
Thank you, Council.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming out on
Council.
Monday.
Have a great day.
We need a workshop.
Okay, item 2. City Council budget session, presentation and discussion of draft 2019-2020 fiscal year budget.
Okay.
I gotta, okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, audience and viewers. The last direction that we received was to take a look at two additional positions. One would be the Public Works Director and the City Engineer. So in looking at those two positions, just start with the Public Works Director. I was gonna go ahead and just do it from here, if that's all right. Starting with the Public Works Director. Go forward one more slide. Moment. So different cities have different scopes and minimum requirements for the Public Works Director. And so Selma's job description, the City of Selma has had a Public Works Director that's responsible for all city buildings, infrastructure, mechanical maintenance, essentially parks, streets, fleet, and facilities. And the minimum requirements in that job description are for a high school education and 2 years of full supervisory experience. So that's the position that we've had. And moving on to the next slide. That position has had a base salary of a little over 79,000 a year plus 40,000 in benefits for a total salary and benefits package of a little over 119,000, almost 120,000. The Public Works Manager, which was proposed in the initial budget, allowing time to consider maybe different options in a director. But that Public Works Manager was entered into the budget proposal at a base salary of $72,400 with a benefits package of almost $39,000 for a total salary and benefits of $111,214. Going to the next slide. In order to cover the cost increase to look at going with a Public Works Director with the job description that we've had in the past and at the salary schedule we've had in the past, carrying that forward, I would recommend that, if we're gonna go that route, the way to cover that cost increase would be not to do the Public Works Manager and eliminate those costs. And then there would be an increase or a difference between those two positions of $8,615, which we could largely offset with a reduction in overtime because the Public Works Manager position did have overtime attributed to it. About $5,600 in overtime was budgeted for that position, which was, would have received overtime. So there's then a difference now of $2,000, which I think we can put our heads together and figure out how to come up with. So that's some cost analysis for those positions for you.
So eliminate Public Works Manager,
And just go with
Public
the
Works Director, eliminate overtime in the Public Works employee
Manager.
budget or manager budget?
Oh, the manager itself would be 5,600, and then I think for the other 2,000, we can put our, Isaac and Shane and I can put our heads together to figure out if we can do that within Public Works or if we need to look to another area. But we haven't had a chance to do that, but I think $2,000 we could put our heads together and come up with
Find somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
a solution there.
Okay.
So if that's that one. Then looking at the city engineer.
Another question here, Teresa.
Sure.
You know, on the, when you're, city director, what is the base hours? Is it 50 hours on their salary? I mean, director, as far as working hours, what is their criteria? Is
Well,
it 50 hour?
A director position is exempt, so it's really what it takes to get the job done. Some weeks we work more than 40 hours.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What is the base for, especially the directors? Is it 50 hours or 55? Because
There really isn't a number that, I mean, certainly there's a minimum of a full-time job. But with a director, like I said, it's exempt. You need to do what you need to do to get the job done.
Okay. I just wanted to get a baseline with, how many hours, they actually, they work,
Yeah.
Is it average 50 hours, 55?
Well, that's a tough one.
I just want to get a gauge on that, you know what I mean?
Right. It may. I mean, certainly it's a full-time position, which is a minimum of 40 hours a week, but we all know that we work more than that sometimes.
Well, can we ask the acting director? I mean, you would know how many hours you're putting a week, approximately? What do you think, Shane?
I'd say it varies depending on the season, what's going on. Just off the top of my head, I'm going to say I put in probably 60 hours a week on average, every bit of.
And how many hours does engineering put in? How much do we pay for in terms of contract costs for the engineer?
Right now, they're working 20 a week.
20 hours a week.
Correct.
And is there
In the office, there's additional work that is done by projects and.
Is there any request for more hours? I mean, I know everybody wants more work, more pay, but because of the workload, has there been any requests recently for more hours?
On the engineering standpoint, no, they're pretty comfortable where they're at.
So they're pretty comfortable with 20 hours a week, taking care of all the engineering work that the city needs to do right now.
Well, they're doing the baseline as work. I mean, they're not getting involved in capital improvement projects as to the extent that they're developing plans. They're basically just coming in, taking care of the services for the day-to-day operations.
That is the 20 hours, and then they do special projects for us, which are additional hours.
They're
And
well above, correct.
Like
so
the block
it's-
grant
Right.
contracts.
Correct.
Or other special, streets
grants,
projects.
Engineering
So,
for that,
you know.
sidewalks, curb and gutter,
Okay.
They don't just work the 20 hours, but those are the hours in the office.
Okay.
Correct.
Are we on the city engineer now?
Sure, unless there were any other questions at this point, I can go ahead and proceed.
Any other questions?
We can take them all at the end.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks for the information, Teresa. Thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't mean to
Shane,
be
thank you for
cagey
the
there. It's just,
report
it
on the hours,
depends.
okay?
So, with the city engineer, the base salary, we looked at a comparison close to, similar to Reedley, City of Reedley, and kind of have a range here.
What's the numbers on the left and the right? What's the heading on that?
The city engineer,
Yeah, the base salary, left and right. What are the comparisons here?
it's a range compared to Reedley, the City of Reedley.
So Reedley's on the right.
No, I'm sorry,
No?
it's a range. So on the lower end of the range, I should have put a hyphen maybe between the
Okay.
two. But the
105 to 132.
correct.
Is
Gotcha.
what
Yeah.
Reedley's paying, pretty much.
Approximately, approximately.
Okay.
And then there's the full benefits range, so you can see a total cost of 150 to 185,000, let's say, potentially for a city engineer. Now, it may be a little bit different if we dialed it in because the city of Reedley does have utilities, and we don't. However, we do have contracts and service agreements, which we just talked about with utilities that also do need management.
Reedley has their own water and trash.
So
sewer.
it may be a little different. So for the purposes of this discussion, I'm just gonna look at the lower end of this scale for our purposes and say the $150,000 salary package would be maybe what we're looking at in a city engineer. And we estimate that we could save about $75,000 in consultant services to offset that increase in costs. We would still be looking at an additional 76, a little over 76,000 in costs, more or less. It is, you know, we'd have to really do a full. We have a city engineer job description that was created some time ago, but a salary schedule never was. So we're giving you a basic comparison at this point. So there would be a gap of approximately $76,774 to cover the addition of an engineer position. Some ways that we could look at covering that gap, and I would recommend if we're gonna go that direction, that we look at apples to apples, because we're creating a position that will go on into the future as an additional cost. So I don't think one-time costs are what we would wanna look at to make that differential, to cover that gap. So some of the positions that we had talked about that, you know, never an easy discussion to say, but these were ones we were thinking about adding, and here are a couple options if you'd rather go the route of the engineer. I tried not to bring things forward that were, you know, the highest priorities, but I know they all are a priority, so I get that. You know, we didn't put on here things that were the highest priority, like the officers and the fire person or the development specialist, but those could be options too. But these three, I thought maybe were on the end of the spectrum that didn't fit quite in the top two priorities. And that's a code enforcement officer. That was an additional position that we had proposed. Or the maintenance worker for parks. We had actually proposed 3 of them in this budget, so maybe going from 3 to 2. And that would help with almost $57,000. Or the administrative assistant in PD. However, while that's not an officer position, it is a strategic position that is being requested in order to move duties of administration from a lieutenant, from a sergeant, so that sergeant is able to work more closely with a tactical team, a proactive tactical team chief. Would you expand on that a little?
The addition of the administrative assistant would free up my current administrative sergeant, who is responsible now for doing the bulk of what the administrative assistant would be doing, coordinating training, personnel issues, paying bills that we occur, just a great deal of things that have to be done, but no one else in the department can currently do. So if we lost the administrative assistant, we'd have to keep the sergeant in that position. The plan, if we receive the administrative assistant position, would to move that sergeant into investigations, so that position could actively supervise the new tactical response team that we're going to be putting together with the additional bodies that we're receiving in next year's budget. It would be extremely difficult to provide supervision if the administrative sergeant was to remain in that position. Those supervisory responsibilities would fall on other personnel, probably a combination of patrol sergeants and the administrative sergeant's position. So removing the administrative assistant's position would be tantamount to removing a sworn position from our budget.
So probably, you
So,
know, that
just
does
to-
get to a priority of council.
So, just to clarify.
Yeah.
In the very first workshop, council said we want an engineer, because I know I was one of them. It wasn't really on your list of goals. So you're saying then we talked about putting it in a department, then we talked about not putting it in a department. So you're saying if we want an engineer, basically, we had to eliminate one of these, our options to eliminate one of these three positions to help compensate for that?
All three of them.
One of them, I think, would,
Yeah, see,
One
The-
or all three?
no, one of them, we have a gap of 76,000. So these would get us closer. They don't get us completely there. For example, if we wanted to go with a maintenance worker for parks, because there are 3 in the budget, and maybe we want to reduce it to 2. There were 3 proposed. So that still gives us a gap of 19,000.
2,000.
So just one of
19,000.
these would do it?
Yeah,
What is,
well, this'll be the gap.
There's still a gap.
If
that-
if you take that, that'll be
Yeah,
the gap.
that's the gap. If you take one, that'll be the gap.
That plus that equals the
Yeah,
shortfall
it
of
just gets a lot
78.
closer to,
Mhm.
you know, shift the numbers around to be able to make adjustments for 9,000, even 20,000 is one thing. Taking a full scope of 75, you're pulling in from, probably as you're asked, you're pulling in from more from the ambulance fund. You're looking from outside sources to pull into the general fund to do that.
I mean, the code enforcement officer would get us the closest with a gap of
What does
8,900.
Public Works
Let me
have to say
clarify
about
real quick. The 3 that we're requesting, 2 of them are full-time temporary employees currently. So the
Currently.
only thing that's gonna add on them is their benefit package on those 2 employees. They've been getting salaries for the previous year. The other was an entry-level maintenance worker, which would be the salary plus the benefits.
Right.
I just wanna clarify that to you guys.
So they're already existing. You're
They're
not
already.
getting-
They've
they're
been
not
with us,
getting-
they're-
all we're doing
Yeah.
is
they've
just
been with
making
us
them
for-
full-time
Full-time
employees. We're
and
making
getting
them full-time.
benefits.
Yeah,
Exactly.
benefits.
So it's
What
not
would
like
not
just
having that additional, due to your workload, due to your performance, due to the services that citizens receive right now?
We don't have it now, so
So it wouldn't change
it wouldn't
at
change.
this point?
I mean, we're gonna keep doing what we do. We're shorthanded, but we're gonna be shorthanded.
So, can I,
Would there be, pardon, one more, would there be more overtime? Would the overtime stay the same? This would eliminate overtime, right, to add the additional?
Not necessarily. The overtime's usually due to emergency circumstances, be it a telephone pole knocked down, a street light knocked down, the flooding issue we had a couple weeks ago. That's our normal overtime. We don't work overtime on a normal, like on a normal situation. I avoid it.
Sinkhole, something happening where you have to come out?
I'll take care of that, I'll come and take care of that myself.
Okay.
Yeah, a good example is like the tree that fell down by the park.
Exactly.
It fell after hours, the public was already gone. They're having to come back in and assist for those type of projects and things of that nature. Most of it, their workload is being done during their normal operating hours.
All of our workload's being done during our operating hours. It's just emergency situations when there's a safety issue, just like Isaac said, a tree in the street, or a light pole knocked down or something similar to that. Then that's when we come in.
What was overtime last year, do you recall?
I'm not positive. The only mandatory overtime or scheduled overtime we have is the BAM Festival.
Okay, that's not gonna change.
No. And that's the whole staff for, I believe, 8 hours one day.
Was overtime a big deal?
For Public Works, no.
Not at
Works
all.
last year?
It never has
Okay.
been.
Not at all.
So this will just result in more efficiency, more services to provide.
Operational services.
More safety for the employees because they don't have as much strain on them. Fewer workers' comp claims potentially. It would just it would streamline your operations to have that additional worker, but it wouldn't really expand services to citizens. Okay.
so I have a question. So in our first workshop, we were talking and we were really gung-ho in our engineering, getting an engineer. And we have our consultant because of the lack of trust or lack of effort of us thinking that our engineer that's actually, we have retained right now is not up to par. And now I see that we're gonna have to eliminate either one or probably potentially 2. And every one of these is something that we need to be successful in this community. Every one of these departments is lacking employees. The police department, we've been here for the last 4 or 5 months and we've had this place packed. I believe that they need their tools. I believe they need to get their job done, but as a city and as the city manager, could we entertain a discussion in regards to keeping our engineering firm and maybe putting some teeth into them and maybe figuring a plan where we could have them go back and review them and go back and say, hey, what can we do to get their services up to par? Do we feel, because that's for one. Number 2 would be, because the problem I have right now is that we're discussing in regards to probably adding and subtracting from our departments, but I got elected in December and I still haven't seen an analysis plan in regards to department heads or departments for a full city plan of action of what the structure plan is and what our belief is every department should be doing. So I'd rather entertain if we have to, is probably maintain our city engineer that we have now present, but us together starts talking about what the capabilities are for the future, to lay down the structure plan for the future, to bring an engineer and have him already with our city manager having, because she just came in and she's still analyzing her own
Yeah.
staff.
Could I answer those real quick?
Yes.
All right, so on the consultant, yes, we could certainly talk to the consultant and address the concerns that council has shared or that we're hearing in the community to, and I think that would be a great step, is for us to be able to have that discussion with them, because I haven't. The one thing I've heard from the council in this process is that folks are frustrated, and I've heard this too in some meetings I've been in with you all, is that folks are frustrated that they talk one day to one person and then the next time to another person. So I think that's something.
But I think that has to
we
do a
could-
lot with our planning department too. And
Sure.
he's getting some of the,
Sure.
he's getting some of the overlap, and that's our
Yeah,
initial,
it
that's our
gets
problem.
confusing because
It's
they're.
confusing.
So I think that's something that we can address, and we can give that a go, and if it doesn't work, then we'll be back to where we are. But I think that is something that can be addressed. The second part of your question was the organizational assessment, and I did share in the first budget workshop my assessment of the organization as to where we are today and some suggestions going forward on an annual basis. And one of them was to give us time to do further assessment of the director positions, and the salary survey that council's looking at would give us that time to see if, do we want to, in the year or years ahead, make some changes to the organization that might put different departments or different divisions together. So I do think I addressed that in that first meeting and talked about what my recommendation would be, was to give us that time and take a step with the manager position. So that would give us the opportunity to promote from within and to develop, but also time to assess the organizational structure at the director level.
That makes sense. You're taking it
Yeah.
slowly. I think we rushed into the engineering position. The current engineers had 20 hours of work. We don't know if there'd even be enough work for a
Yeah.
full-time engineer. This business of putting engineering and public works together, I don't think anybody is really, the majority of our
Yeah,
council
well, you
is
know,
supportive of. And it seemed like when we were talking about this, we were almost talking about like a demotion of our public works director, Shane. And I would say he's done a great job. And the last thing our city wants to do is send a message that, hey, you do this great job. Everybody says how great you are. Hey, good job. We're demoting you. You know, we don't do that in City of Selma. We reward, good work with the appropriate wage and the appropriate title. And I really think it's time for Shane to be the public works director. And in terms of engineering, I think, Councilman Trujillo is right. You need to have a conversation with the engineers and say, look, here are the problems that people are having. They're getting two of you. They'd rather see one of you, like Councilman Trujillo, Mayor Pro Tem Avalos, or Franco have talked about getting on the same page, providing these services that we need to feed into that plan of what we're going to do. Plans are great, but we need to be able to execute them. And to execute them, we have to have the right people. Well, we've got some really good people. We need to keep them and reward them, make sure that
Well,
they're in the right job, in the right position. And in terms of engineering, again, that's kind of like that 28 acres of that park we always keep talking about. We want those additional 28 acres, but in the meantime, we're not moving forward on the park itself. We're doing that. We're actually doing that on the park, not to get off the subject. But we need to, in my opinion, focus and, work with what we have right now. And if engineering will come to the table and have a good talk with you in terms of what they might be able to do to modify their approach and how they provide their services, maybe they could stay on. And we wouldn't actually have to have this discussion. You could just work on expanding their services
Yeah,
in
we-
the future.
But,
And just for the record, I did want to say that the manager position was never presented as a demotion, just
I know
so
it wasn't,
everybody knows, because
But
I know there's a
and I
lot
know
of.
you didn't mean that, but perception can be different sometimes.
You know,
than
I
the
didn't
actual
see it
fact.
that way.
No, but
Yeah, I
didn't see
in
it as a
paper numbers, it definitely was not, it was a
absolutely.
promotion.
You
So
know-
Teresa, I have a question. So if we stay with our current engineer or gateway, because I do not want to see any of these positions eliminated. I mean, we are in desperate need of another code enforcer.
Amen.
Again, maintenance workers, we're not adding two more bodies. I mean, they're already working here. We're just giving them benefits. Administrative assistant, PD, you know, we need these positions. So if we stay with the current, with Gateway, then there's no increase in the engineer position, correct?
Correct.
We're already budget for them, so we can revisit maybe next budget and see if the money's, you know, will work out for a full-time engineer. But at this point, we can stay with what we have, and then let's just move forward with our existing engineer.
Right, the consultants are already in the budget that's
Yeah.
been presented.
Okay.
And are
You
they
know,
getting
let me-
paid out of any streets and roads right now? Any LTF or anything? Any
No.
special development or
Only when they're
impact
doing
fees?
special
Special
projects
projects.
that are
Okay.
streets related. That's the only time they're getting funded out of those.
We wouldn't see
You
that
know.
in the budget though, because they're not
It's-
currently
they're all
working on
general.
one. Okay.
You know, let me add to it a little bit here, Scott. I'm the oldest guy in the council now, father time now, but, when I first come on board, we had engineering, we had, we had planning department, and when the economy turned, soured in this country, we offered, early retirement, and we eliminated, positions in that magnitude. And, being, in this, get to see the beginning and where we're at now, I'll be honestly, I didn't like to lay anybody off or, I don't, and that's a very ugly feeling. And the other issue too was I seen how it hurt the cities, not just my city of Selma, but other cities around us and in the state of California, what impact it took place in the economic, downturn, I call it. And now we're on what we call, I'm seeing a good thing right now. I'm seeing an economic increase, and we got to maintain these staff members, and we got to find a way to increase our planning department more efficient and engineering more efficient. I know we don't have enough work allocated yet, but it's moving in the right direction. But these departments are very important. We see up here because you eliminate one of them, because I've seen it already. Eliminating departments, from fire, police, it hurt. Public works I'll give you public works a good example. When we lay people, people got laid off in public works. Shame. The impact. These people we didn't hire nobody. These poor devils were working like slaves. I'm not to be mean, but I'm telling you straight up. These guys were hitting projects like. At one team, they have 4 or 5 guys attack one area, move on to the next area, in the hot sun and everything. And not just their department, but the city staff members, as far as in the finance department and our secretarial, the manager were put a lot of pressure. And I felt at the time, and I see when you see these things, they became multitask people, and I greatly admire them, and every department became that way, from fire, police, all the way down. But I see now it's important to keep these people and expand on the operation, because I know what happened in the past. I seen what took place, how it hurt the cities. So we need to maintain this thing.
Yeah.
And
Be
find
careful about what we do.
yeah.
Personnel moves.
I have a
we make.
plan, but I have to discuss when we have
We got
workshop.
work to do on Thursday.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go.
So, are you clear in your direction?
Do,
Does council want to give direction at this point?
yeah,
Is
I
there?
do need direction.
Okay, so did you have anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, what I'm hearing, Teresa, is you would like to go with your original recommendation of just holding off on the positions until the assessment has been done with our salary,
Right.
position assessment and stuff.
That is my recommendation. That was in the first budget, was to do the manager, which is a promotional opportunity, and to give us time to look at how we may want to configure directors moving forward. So that is a recommendation that, remains my recommendation, but council, you make the decision on this, and we will implement the
So
decision
the
that you
cost
decide.
savings, though, to have a public works director would come by eliminating the public Works Manager position, is that correct?
Right, I don't think we would need both. I was recommending the one for an opportunity to give us time to organizationally assess.
See if the engineering would merge with the Public
That
Works.
would be one possibility, or it may be with planning, so,
I'm just
or
not hearing-
maybe not, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm not hearing that today. I mean, it just for now, for fiscal year 1920, I'm hearing Public Works, we keep a director, no Public Works eliminate the Public Works Manager, not that we ever had it before. We're not really eliminating, we never had it.
Right, it was
We're
just
just not
in
gonna go
in
with
the
it for
original
1920.
budget, we'll
Yeah,
adjust it.
And then keep
if that's
engineering the
council's
same until
direction.
you do your assessment and you have your heart-to-heart with our current engineering team. And thanks to them for all they've done for these years, really appreciate their efforts. And we hope we have that problem. We need more engineering help, so hopefully that'll come about in the future. But that's what I'm hearing. Does everybody concur
I'm
with
good.
that?
Are we good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I agree there, Scott. You know,
Do you need a vote or a consensus?
just a consensus, right? It's not a, it's just a presentation.
Okay.
So I have three that would like to move forward for sure with the director and not the engineer.
Right.
Right, and eliminate the Public Works Manager position. Just don't do it at this point.
Well, they never had it.
Don't have it.
Yeah, but we didn't
We'll
Just don't
take it
go
out of the
forward with
budget,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
just to clarify, this is just presentation and discussion of the draft budget. The final budget will come to council during the June 17th council meeting.
Okay. So you're clear on that, City Manager?
Questions?
Are you clear on that?
Well,
We need a,
Yeah.
What's it, what are we doing?
The majority of council, we have 3 council members that would like to move forward with the Public Works Director as it has been in the City of Selma with that job description and salary that was presented, and eliminate the Public Works Manager position.
What did we have prior? Why are we changing it?
We never
for
had
the
it.
upcoming
Never
budget,
had it.
there was a proposed change. Proposed
Just gonna look
change.
at it.
I'm sorry,
There was
no.
a change, right? A proposed change to add the manager, and that's.
You
not
changed
doing
the,
that.
The initial budget,
I thought we were eliminating the engineer and keeping the gateway engineering, which would make sure that our
Right.
Yeah,
public
that's
works
what it-
directors are
Yeah,
just gonna,
yeah.
not gonna have
Yeah.
somebody overseeing.
That's what
Yeah.
they're doing.
We're doing
Okay.
that.
That's what we're doing.
so it will be a Public Works Director and no city engineer. We'll use the consultants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, if
Yeah.
I may.
Is that
um,
consensus then?
I'm
I
okay
have
with that.
4,
What do we have?
We have 4.
Well,
Four?
it's,
or
I'm,
we have
my
enough. I can-
little, I'm actually not too opposed to the idea. My only concern is we're just gonna do an analysis on our staffing, our director's positions and stuff. That study we were talking about. That,
You mean an assessment?
you know, the assessment.
The
Thank you.
assessment.
So, why, are we gonna define a position before our assessment that we're going to pay for in the next upcoming cycle is done? That's why I said, if we just keep things status quo until that assessment is done, and then we can promote mid-year and stuff like that. Because what if we're,
We're not changing the, we're not adding a position. The idea was they were gonna
Salary's
add,
not changing.
administration was gonna
It's
add a
already
manager, a
budgeted for
Public
it,
Works
right?
Manager. They're not gonna add that
Okay.
now. They're still gonna do the assessment
okay,
of directors and
we should keep
and
it
a
acting
salary
director?
survey.
No, so we will still do the assessment, but the majority of council is recommending that we use put into this upcoming budget, a Public Works Director. So the salary survey and salary and benefits survey that we do comprehensively, you know, that position will now be in place. So if there is some change, changing that would be much more difficult than changing something now.
Okay.
You would need to add an engineer, that probably wouldn't be doing any changes until the next fiscal year then, 2021, if it would
Likely.
happen at all.
Unless we have some issue.
Unless there's some
Yeah.
issue where we would
Right.
need an engineering director and to make that separate. Is there any issue with Shane becoming our full-time Public Works Director, going from acting to full-time? Has that assessment been made?
Well, we gotta stay away from talking about individuals in
Okay.
these discussions,
I
but
wanna
let
make
me,
that
let me.
perfectly clear, I have not spoken about an individual.
Right,
You
no,
are the city manager.
I'm
not-
just
I'm talking
generally,
in general.
I'm
And
just
not
talking
making,
generally.
I'm not telling you to do one thing, I'm not
No,
telling
no,
you
I
not to do
understand.
it, I'm just asking as anybody would, looking into the city, is Shane still the acting director, or is he the full-time director?
He,
of
he's
Public
the
Works.
acting director.
Okay.
Okay, so, and that is an option, but I think, you don't wanna keep an acting director for years and years. So I think addressing it is a positive thing. Moving forward, I'm glad you brought the question up, though, because we have for the directors here, and typically what I see is that for a director, you do open up the recruitment. I think internal candidates have obviously a very good advantage in those opportunities. And I'm not forecasting anything, but internal candidates always have some insights to being competitive in that process.
So you're
Chief
saying before you
Peterson
would
did that
do-
as well.
So you're saying before you would, the process is before you would appoint a full-time director, you would go through a hiring process?
There
A
would have to be
recruitment
there would
process.
have to be some process, right? And Chief Peterson went through that process, and
That's something that's
as
just a
well.
matter of course that the city just does. Okay.
So I think you mentioned
And how long does that process typically take?
that. I don't. Do you think about 2 months?
And you anticipate going through that recruitment process in the near future for any department that might not have a full-time director?
I think that would be a priority.
Yeah.
Certainly, we do have some changes in HR. Do you want to? Would you
let
like
her-
to
let her tell
add
us.
to that?
I'm sorry, I was listening to Raina, but she asked me to repeat how long the recruitment process would be, and it would take 60 to 90 days. And then, I'm sorry, I did not hear the additional.
Is that in the budget, an actual recruiting, is it a big deal to put a recruiting
Just the
process
hiring
in the budget?
process, it's not in there. I
It
mean, it's
di-
just
it-
posting the positions and things of that nature, so.
Okay.
We have budgeted for recruitments, specific recruitments. If we have like a director recruitment may cost more than a normal recruitment because you may use different avenues. It depends on the breadth of the recruitment that you choose to use. And we have done both for directors. We have done outside recruitments, and we have also just done an internal promotion process for directors. We have done both.
Okay. And that would be up to the city manager to decide what process you're gonna follow in this case. Okay. Well, it sounds like you're going to be moving on that
Okay.
as a priority.
Yeah, if council's direction is to go with that, I mean, a director, that's a important position to fill as well
Let's look
as
at
the others. We have a lot of positions that we're adding. I think it's up to
Are we-
10.
Does she
That's
need
right.
consensus
Do you need a consensus to
to
move
move
on that?
forward? You do?
I think I heard consensus. Yeah.
Consensus, okay.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. With that, any other business? Does anybody else, any last chance for oral communications? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to
Is there a
adjourn.
second?
Second.
We're adjourned.
Look at this.
Jim, thank you for bringing us KFN.
Oh, no, no, no.